Juppy, we want to get you went back to the race course in 2013, but you just wanted to say something about the
Yeah,
minimum bet.
sort of the beginning of the sort of end for my time in the office at that stage was when Paddy Power took over Sportsbet. And they sort of brought in the Paddy Power mentality where it was chop and limit, and we stopped trading. And also they cut the rebates off to the tote. So there wasn't a lot of trading happening now. And then what happened was a lot of the guys that I worked with during that time have thought, well, we made money trading for the company. We might as well just do it for ourselves and go punting. So there's probably 4 or 5 of them now. Dan Kelly's one, and a good mate, Justin Griffiths, that are just, they're professional punters now. But when I was there, we must have had, I don't know, probably 30 odd guys that were professional odds compilers. And one thing that the minimum bet law has done is it's, especially for the bigger firms, they've basically outsourced the odds compiling, because they can basically have a computer generated price now that they can put up, and then they can react to any bets coming in. So as soon as the prices go up, if I decide to chime in and knock a price off and my account's marked up, well, they're going to adjust the prices accordingly. So normally now, within 5 or 10 minutes, the prices aren't that far away until the really big syndicates get involved later on, or the horses are in the yard, or there's extra information. So basically, they've outsourced that, and it's the cheapest price discovery in the world. Like, people think, oh no, the firms will do a fortune if they have the minimum bet laws. I don't think the firms over there in the UK know what they're missing out on, especially the big ones, because if they just kept, part of the minimum bet rule is you only have to lay it once. So they check the ledgers of when the bets come through. If I'm first in, I get the bet. After that, they can turn the price off. So they've only got to lay it once. So if you're going to hold 100,000 online, but you've only got to lay it to me once to win 1,000, it's very, very cheap price discovery.
Okay, so just hope the UK bookmakers are looking at that. They might change their minds. So you've gone back to the race course in 2013. You're an outdoors man. What did that happen?
It was funny. I was a bit jaded. I'd done it for a long time. I had a young family. I thought, you know what? I just need a bit of a break. I've just about had enough. And an old bookmaker rang me and said, I've got no staff. Can you come and help me on Saturday? So I thought, all right. And sort of the going rate for a clerk at the time was about $180 to $200 a day. I said, I want $300. And he goes, no dramas. I'll see you there half an hour before the first. And I thought, I thought I was trying to get out of this. It's like the mob. Just when you think you're out, they drag you back in. So off I went to Healesville, which is one of the picnic tracks. And I think I finished up doing about 3 years working. Basically, I ran that show for him to the point where there was a funny story. I basically bet with a gentleman named Ian Taylor. And one of the other bookies came up to me about 3 years later. He goes, "G'day, Ian. How you going?" I said, "Mate, my name's not Ian." He goes, "Yeah, you're Ian Taylor, the bookie." I said, no, mate, I only work for him." He goes, "Really?" He goes, "It looks like it's your joint. You run it." I said, no, that's not me. So, yes, I did that for a little while. And then an interesting job, I got offered a job by one of the bookmakers that worked at the Call of the Card last week, James Philgate. He ran a business that supplied all the bookmaking equipment to the bookmakers. So the betting boards, the computers, all that sort of stuff. And it was basically a walk-in, walk-out system. The bookmaker literally only had to bring cash and a betting bag. Everything else was set up for them. So I was going to the races 4 or 5 times a week to set up all the betting boards and whatnot, and did that for nearly 12 months. And that was where I met Natalie Hinckley, who was and still is my most recent boss on course.
And Natalie, somebody I interviewed a couple of years ago now, lady bookmaker, travels all around Victoria, I suppose. And so that actually, want to talk about this. There's a very famous bookmaker in the UK that likes to do food vlogs. Now I've seen, I've really enjoyed watching yours. Was that inspired by a famous bookmaker over in England? Is that purely coincidental?
I was very privileged to meet that bookmaker last week. What an absolute gentleman. I'm not so much inspired. It sort of just happened a bit a bit organically. We went out for tea one night just as the firm was starting, and they basically recorded me eating my dinner, because one of the key differences here in Australia compared to the UK is basically all the betting shops now in Australia are inside a pub. So if I didn't have a Saturday where if I wasn't going to the races, I'd say to you, Simon, well, how about we go down, we'll have a couple of pots of beer, we'll have a Parma, and we'll watch the races and have a few bets. And basically the chicken Parmigiana, which is a crumbed chicken fillet with some sort of tomato sauce and some sort of melted cheese with chips next to it, not underneath it, and vegetables, is pretty standard pub fare. And basically you can judge a pub by how well they do this basic dish. So, but
you've been quite critical of the various Palmers. I mean, I must admit, I spent a bit of time in Australia, and I staggered home from the pub and chomped down on rows a few times. But Palmers were new on me, so I was watching with interest. But there does seem to be a fair difference in quality, and the pies as well. You've also
yes. So a pie is normally a staple on the way to the races. That's one thing. One of my all-time favourite foods is going to eat the jellied eels at Plumpton.
You don't get them anymore.
Gone, has he? Oh, so yeah. Between that and some of the racecourse food over here, you wouldn't feed to a brown dog. It is horrific, to the point where there's been plenty of courses where I've ordered Uber Eats, because that's how bad some of the food is here. So often, if there was a good bakery on the way to the races, you'd stop and get something to eat on the way rather than eating there. So that started the pie reviews, and then often you'd stop for a beer and a feed on the way home. And that's where sort of the Palmer reviews, and it sort of tied in with a lot of the traveling that we did too.
Yeah, there's must be a lot of that. Can I ask you a few things? Actually, yep. Messaged me a while back when he saw Ben over in Australia, and he was asking a few of these questions. So I thought, which I didn't know the answer to, so I thought I'd ask you: are bookmakers on course allowed to hedge into the betting exchanges?
I've seen bookmakers here that have developed a hunch like this because they spend their days hunched over looking at the Betfair screen and trading. And basically, that's what a lot of on-course bookmaking is now, is just basically they're traders on the exchange. So if they need to back one, they can lay one. Yeah, Betfair's critical to doing business on course over here.
Okay, one thing I did hear from the Melbourne Cup, the Melbourne meeting is just gone. The bookmakers are betting to virtually no margin. Is it because it's that competitive?
Yeah. And that used to happen regularly. There was a product that we used to have here, and you can still get it from time to time. Top Sport offer it from time to time. It's a product called Best of the Best, which sometimes if you watch Australian racing, you'll see it flash up and you'll have the 3 different tote dividends. Well, Best of the Best is the best of those 3 and whatever the best fluctuation was during the last 20 minutes of betting. Well, when those prices used to come from the course, the top fluctuation was anywhere between about 98 and 103. So I used to be able to beat that with my eyes closed, because all you had to do was, in an 8-runner race, if you could find 3 that couldn't win, you could back all 5 and make money. So the call of the card is a very unique event, and the call of the card was a week ago today, day before the Melbourne Cup. It's the only time of the year on-course bookmakers are allowed to field off-course, and they normally have 4 bookmakers. Last year, Natalie did it, and she did a wonderful job, and this year we had 4 bookmakers there, and you have to bet the odds to win 200,000 to all comers, and it worked out that the percentage across the board was somewhere between 99.1 and 100.3. So they bet to no margin whatsoever, and they were betting a quarter of the odds each way.
How do they make it pay then?
Basically, they then have to go and then work their books on the rails the next day at Flemington and try and work up. And basically, they've just got to be right. They've just got to try and lay the right ones. If you went and spoke to Rob Waterhouse or Warren Woodcock or James Philgate or Lyndon Cleary, who were there, I know James lost on the Cup only because it was his call and he was the one that laid the winner.
Right, okay.
Whereas the other guys probably would have won on the race, because they've laid stuff that hasn't run a place. But I know the 100-to-1 shot Shiraz running a place was a shocking result for a lot of bookies there on Tuesday.
Okay, just back to the practicalities of being an on-course bookie there. How much will it cost you to stand as a firm for each?
So basically, it costs you nothing. You've just got to work your way into these meetings. So sometimes you can buy your way in by buying another person's business. But other than that, once you post your guarantee, because all the bookmakers are guaranteed here, so you might have to put 20,000 into the guarantee, then you're granted your license, and then you apply to the courses to work. If there's enough space, they'll put you straight in. If there's not, you might have to go to some of the far-flung meetings and the lesser meetings where you're not going to hold any money, and you work your way up. Or there might be a retiring bookmaker that's selling his business and wants to get out, and you can buy that, and then you'll inherit his stands.
Okay, now compared to when you first started, I mean, you've already sort of explained it's pretty bad, but how bad is the decline in on-course business?
It's the same with everything. The whole world's changed. To give you a similar sort of insight, I do a little bit of fundraising here for the local hotel where I drink, and I sell the raffle tickets for the meat raffle on a Friday night. It's the same there. No one's got any cash. Everyone pays by card now. And the banks over here in Australia are probably no different to the UK. Don't really want to have anything to do with gambling. So it's very hard for a bookmaker to get a tap and go terminal as well as the responsible gambling stuff. It just makes it really, really hard. So there's just a lot less cash around. And we've got a generation now who have been taught to bet by the corporate bookmakers. They weren't taught by their fathers or grandfathers or someone who showed them how to do it. They weren't there when I was there, when you were in the ring and that was the center of activity. That's where all the vibrancy was, and you watched what he did because when he bet, the price went off. Now it's, take a same game multi or accumulator or take accumulators, all that sort of stuff. Take lucky 15s. It's all that sort of stuff's being pushed on them, and through the advertising, that's what sort of educated the punters, and the poor old on-course guys have just been left behind. Like, as I said, you can go to some of these midweek meetings, and if you hold $200 or $300, you're doing really, really well. And all it is then is liability. Like, if you get one owner who wants to back his horse to win 1,000 and it wins, well, there's your day gone. Like, you're not going to get out of it.
Okay, now look at it seems that the UK is a fair way back from that bad situation because the on-course market is still vibrant in a lot of meetings, even midweek. But you can see the way things are going, especially with what you've just described. Are there any lessons that the UK could learn from Australia, what's happened there, to stop us following you over the precipice on course?
I'd be very careful with the amount of meetings you have. You guys have got an advantage because you've got a much bigger population than we do. But we have too much racing. And it's oversaturated to the point where there's so much of it that if you miss today, it's on again tomorrow. The meetings that are still good over here are the ones that are actually special. So I'm gonna go to a country race meeting. It's one of the most picturesque courses. If anyone gets the chance to watch it, it's a track called Dunkeld. It's a very tight little track. It's got a beautiful mountain range in the background. The town consists of a pub and a general store, and there'll be about 12,000 people there. And most of the bookies will hold minimum 20,000 there. But you could then go the day after to just the run-of-the-mill meeting, and you wouldn't hold 1,000. So the special meetings, and like what you've reported too, Simon, you've done an absolutely wonderful job with reporting some of those real big meetings, like the Cheltenhams and the Royal meetings and the Glorious Goodwoods, and they're still always going to be good because they're an event meeting. People set themselves for them, and that's what we sort of learned. The real good meetings, the event meetings, people will still go to. The run-of-the-mill stuff that's just product, for a lack of a better term, that's just there for the punters during the day and the night. Like, that's the other thing. We've got night racing here 3 nights a week now. There's just so much of it. If you miss it, you know that it'll be on later on. So I think that's something to be wary of. Maybe less is more.
Okay, just finally, we don't want to end on a negative. It's back to the call of the card. I'd love to go to that. Look fascinating. I saw you there with your fancy headgear. One of them might be behind you. The game's not totally gone, has it? But what's the biggest bet? What was the biggest bet laid there?
Oh, it was to win over $1 million. I think the guys from the Wolf Den, I know last year well, this is an insight. Natalie, I ran the computer for Natalie last year, and it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do on the computer, because they're shouting bets at you 19 to the dozen, like you're trying to punch them out as quick as you can. We had, before we did anything else, before we went to the races the next day, we had 3 horses taking $1 million out of the book. So that gives you an idea. Like, I was lucky. I was sitting next to a couple of other professional punters who were real good mates of mine, and we decided we'll get a little syndicate together and we're going to back 2 or 3 horses. So we backed Right You Are, who was originally from the UK. We had 60,000 to 1,000 each way in. We backed Vow and Declare, who was a previous winner of the Melbourne Cup. We had 30,000 to 1,000 each way. And then we backed the eventual winner, luckily, without a fight. And this just shows how well we went. We had 2,000 each way at, well, what's 6.5? That's 13 to 2. 13,000 to 2,000 each way. And it started 9 to 1. So we've won, but we're still kicking ourselves saying, well, we didn't beat the SP. So the typical punters, my main goal for the next period, Simon, is if I can channel the whinging of bookmakers and punters into renewable energy, I'll solve the energy crisis.
And on that note, Anthony Juppy, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Simon, absolute pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for doing these. As someone who consumes a hell of a lot of content, there's been many long road trips where this has been whacked on the screen and we've watched the betting people as we've driven around. So thank you for the job that you do. It reaches all around the world. Don't worry.
Oh, brilliant. My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.